right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. We're here to talk about exactly how to land your first remote job in tech, and I have a lot to cover, so let's jump right in. Who am I? I'm Caro Griffin, also known as Caroline Syrup on the internet. I'm a senior operations leader calling in from Mexico City today. I love remote work, process development, and tacos. And I'm currently the director of operations at a tech education startup called Skillcrush. Our mission is to economically empower women and other underrepresented groups in tech, and we do that by teaching digital skills like coding and design and UX, but also the soft skills and the career skills that you need to actually get hired for those digital skills. So you're here for a reason, and that's what we're all about today. So you're looking for work, and the world's in the middle of a pandemic, amongst other things. So job searching is never fun, and now more than ever, you may be experiencing a really pressing need, especially if you've been laid off or furloughed. But job searching looks different today than it did 5 years ago or even 3 months ago. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So today I'll be covering who is hiring tech workers and how to find those companies. What types of tech workers are currently, what types of tech jobs are currently available? How hiring practices are changing, how to best position yourself to get hired, and what you can do even with minimal tech skills. So first things first, I'm going to give you a lot of hopefully very actionable information and tips today, and it can seem like I'm assigning you a lot of homework. So I wanted to just kind of like give some framing and some context here before we jump in, which is that I really believe that your #1 priority during a job search has to be to take care of yourself, which means you have to go easy on yourself. But seriously, this is the most important thing I'm going to cover today, because I don't want you to walk away from this session being like, oh no, I have to do these 100 things that Caro told me to do. And it's because it's really about like bit by bit, chipping away at things and iterating. And, you know, this can be a process, and you don't want to burn out, or like making yourself feel guilty is not going to be helpful in this scenario. So everything is crazy right now. Things are changing by the minute. If you're out of work and at home, it can feel like you have all the time you need to apply for jobs, but the emotional toll of what is happening is real, and you need to account for that. So take time to learn new skills and apply for jobs, but don't set your expectations of yourself too high. You're doing the best you can, and that is enough. So you are smart, you deserve a good, high-paying, pandemic-proof job, and things are crazy for everyone. So we've got to get through this together. So let's talk about exactly how to do that, how to land a remote job even during a crisis. My first lesson is going to be where to look for work. So first things first, you can look all the normal places. Even if you're focused specifically on finding a remote job, almost all tech jobs are remote right now. So of course, there are a number of remote specific job boards out there, and it seems like that number actually grows by the week. So we've actually done a big roundup of all of them on the Skillcrush blog, and you can find that by just going to skillcrush.com/blog and doing a search for remote job boards. And we try to keep that up to date, because it does seem like there's constantly more of them. But I think I really wanted you to like consider more than just those, because there are a lot of them, but they're not the only place that you can find remote jobs. So there are also a lot of niche job boards that can be really great, because they're smaller, and that means competition is less and your application has a better chance of rising to the top. So I always encourage our students at Skillcrush to do a little bit of digging around on Google to find these by searching terms like your city's name plus front-end developers and the term job board, or Women in Tech Atlanta job board, and so on. The same thing goes for Slack communities, Twitter accounts. Job boards aren't the only place to find jobs. So when I say niche job boards, I really mean like niche job boards, niche Slack communities, all of those things. Especially if you're from an underrepresented group in tech, there's a lot of great communities out there. So, but honestly, my biggest suggestion is to try to play the long game if you can. This is going to sound counterproductive, but like, I promise you it's the best thing you can do. Track down companies that you want to work for. Make sure you're on their email list and that you follow them on Twitter. Look at their about page and find people in the roles that you want, or that might be hiring the roles you want, and connect with them in LinkedIn on Twitter. Don't just like blindly follow people on LinkedIn, but, you know, add a message. I think that's a really underutilized function to say like, hey, I read your blog post on X. I found it really interesting. I would love to follow your work. I hope we can connect. Just like 2 lines there. The bar is really low on LinkedIn, so those like 2 lines can make a big difference. And if you're really brave, reach out to one of those hiring managers for an informational interview. You know, you can say like, or reach out to the person that's already in that job and say, hey, I see you're a front-end developer at X. I really admire your background, and as a self-taught developer, I'm in a similar position. I love the company, and I would love to just hear a little bit more about where you got where you are. I won't take up too much of your time, but like if you could spare 20 minutes, would really appreciate it. You know, not everyone's going to say yes. A lot of them probably won't, but some may offer to answer emails by questions by email, or some may just connect with you so that you can stay on their radar. And this is a great way to build your network and start to make friends on the internet is what I try to reframe networking as. So this may not help you get your first remote job in tech, but it might, and it will certainly help you get your second, your third, and so on. I can't tell you how many Skillcrush alumni I've hired because they were active in their classes and did good work and gave me a chance to get to know them online. So obviously don't be creepy about it, but this kind of networking can really take you far. So lesson number 2, let's talk about what types of jobs are currently hiring. So first, companies that are essential during the crisis. Think about all the things that you're still using and really relying on right now. Obviously, this is healthcare, grocery stores, delivery apps, education tech, the list goes on. So also companies that are already remote. So there are a fair amount of them, and a lot of them actually spoke today. So maybe you heard from some new companies that are on your radar. And lots of tech companies in general. So all of them are currently remote, and many of them, like Shopify, for example, have committed to staying remote. So that's super exciting for the whole industry. I'm also going to specifically plug customer support roles, both at startups and at tech adjacent companies, because the need for customer support has skyrocketed because we can't do anything in person anymore. We can't go to a store or a business to get help. We have to email or call now. And customer support or customer success roles at tech companies can be a great bridge job, which I'll talk a little bit more about in detail in a second. So lesson number 3, how to best position yourself to get hired. This is where I'm going to spend the most of my time today. First things first, you need a stellar resume. Here's some things that I think you can do to take yours to that next level, and that's kind of what I define as like a stellar resume. So create a consistent look across your resume and cover letter and really any documents that you're submitting at any point in the hiring process. Use consistent fonts and font sizes. You know, make sure that all of the job titles are the same size, all of the companies are the same size. Pick one accent color, and spacing is really underrated. You know, make sure that you're being consistent about where you're single spacing things and double spacing things, because spacing really gives someone's eyes a place to rest. When you have white space on your resume and when it's formatted nicely, it can make it easier to skim and for hiring managers to take away the things you want them to take away. And then this is like a continuation of that same thing, which is that like anyone can say they're detail oriented, but your resume is really your chance to prove it. So, you know, like really focus on the details. Have multiple people like your friends, family, a partner review your resume, but also any friends you have working into tech. Something I see a lot is people using the wrong capitalization or formatting for things like WordPress or JavaScript. And while these errors shouldn't keep you from getting a job, little things like that can add up, especially depending on the role. So don't give a hiring manager any reason to hold these tiny things against you. And now I have a lot of thoughts about resumes, but this is a short talk, so I'm gonna focus on these highlights. And I really encourage you to check out the Ultimate Guide to the Perfect Resume, which is just a Google away, or it's on the Skillcrush blog. And we really walk you through the whole process, give you examples and even a nice template. So I definitely recommend checking that out. Duplicate slides. Okay, there we go. But here are some more quick tips in the meantime. So use the same tense for the whole thing. Switching between tenses can be jarring for a hiring manager doing a quick skim, so I recommend using past tense for the whole thing. Even current roles, because you have done those things in the past, even if you're still doing them. Quantify everything you can. Use numbers and percentages to prove your expertise, especially for more subjective things. So like if you were an administrative assistant, you didn't just provide support to the marketing team. You supported a marketing team of 6 with tasks such as X, Y, and Z. Describe your roles with bullet points instead of sentences. I recommend starting every line with an action verb too. So like managed, coordinated, responded, and so on. And use proper capitalization for technical tools. So I already talked about this a little bit, but WordPress is a really common offender here. People make it two words or put a space or don't capitalize the P. As far as don'ts go, the big one is don't go over one page. So there are very few exceptions to this, and they really only apply for very senior roles and or certain specialties like academia and government work. So if you're here, I'm assuming you're looking for a job in tech specifically, so they probably don't apply to you. So keep it to one page. And I think I'm seeing some comments here about white space is impossible for a software engineer. It's really not, I promise. Because one of the things is like your resume should not be every single thing you've done and every single job you've ever had. You really want to focus on the most important and critical tasks that are relevant to the job at hand. And one of the tactics that you can do for that is having several copies of your resume, because a lot of us are probably applying for slightly different jobs. And so having a couple go-tos that you can make small tweaks to is going to help that process scale, so it's not so much of a time suck. And also consider your font sizes and your margins. A 0.25 inch margin is pretty standard for like an office printer to make sure things don't get cut off, and that can give you a lot of room. And I'm going to talk about some things you don't have to include too. So don't include your home address or personal objective. Companies don't need your address until you're hired, so it just takes up space. And a personal objective is also pretty useless these days. You can use a tagline if you want. So for example, mine is just senior operations leader, but a personal objective just takes up valuable real estate, and you can cover that in a cover letter or an email application in a way more fitting way. One thing I will note though is that if you do a tagline, something I see a lot is that like entry-level web developers and web designers will put aspiring or like beginner or like junior, and don't do that. Don't sell yourself short before someone else gets a chance to. Just own it. You're a web developer, you're a front-end developer, you're a UX designer, UX researcher, whatever the case may be. Don't couch it. And also, don't include a photo unless those are common in your region. So you'll probably know if that is common. And let's see, and then don't let one or two words hang on to a new line. This is another great space saver. So try to reword things so that your bullet points can all fit on one line. And sometimes you're going to need more than one line, and that's totally fine. But if you have to take more than one line, like make the most of that space. Don't just let one or two words hang. It doesn't look as nice, and it also is just a waste of space when it's like very valuable real estate. So, but all of that being said, I want to share my #1 tip for all of you job seekers. You ready? You need to create a professional online presence. Pausing for dramatic effect. AKA, you need to exist online and you need to look good. So give me 30 minutes of awesome fell into a rabbit hole content, and I will remember you forever. So if you take away anything from this, this is what I recommend you taking away from it. So if you don't know exactly what I'm talking about, I've made your checklist. So first up, let's talk about LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn, make one. I'll admit that even as a hiring manager, I was a little late to the LinkedIn party, but it's super helpful in tech, especially if you're looking for a technical role, because that's how a recruiter is gonna look for candidates. And so you wanna make that easy for them to do, and who knows, maybe like that's how you'll find your next job. They'll do the work for you. So the Skillcrush blog has a whole guide on updating your LinkedIn that's pretty easy to find. And it's actually what I used to initially update mine. So I definitely recommend it if you just need kind of like a step-by-step, like what does it mean to have an up-to-date, like SEO-friendly LinkedIn? Next is you need a portfolio of work. So even a super simple landing page will do. Just remember that done is better than perfect here. So ship something. Even a one-pager with your name, a brief bio, and links to contact info is totally sufficient, especially as a good place to start. So you can add work samples and more content over time, but don't let having it perfect stop you from having anything at all. And then depending on your specialization, Twitter or Instagram can also be a great way to put yourself out there and give hiring managers a chance to get to know and help you network too. I talk to a lot of students who are like, but I hate social media. Do I really have to do this? And the answer is no, you absolutely don't. But if you're already active on those, go ahead and kind of like bring that into your professional identity, because just like I said, it's about like so much of tech is about like making friends on the internet, especially now when we're limited to the internet. And so that can be a really great way to differentiate yourself and to meet people and make those connections. And if you're feeling really ambitious, a GitHub profile with public work samples, a Dribble or Behance if you're a designer. There's a lot of professional tools out there that can be a great way to upload work, especially that's a little easier. Like the bar is a little lower because it's a little easier to upload some work samples to Behance sometimes than it is to like create a whole nother page on your portfolio, and it can feel like a really high bar. So these can be great ways to get by that. And I just recommend set a deadline for yourself that feels really aggressive, that's like a couple days out, and just hit publish. I see some people talking about like, is it better to have a not great one? And I definitely think it's better to have a not great one. And by not great, I think I just encourage you to just simplify it. If you don't have time to add your work samples yet, just go ahead and launch it and add those later, because having something is usually better than nothing. And then a super bonus here is a blog, and that's really extra and not something that I recommend a lot of people do, but it's like yes, so sorry, I'm having trouble talking and doing the chat, but a blog can be, if you like doing this and you like writing, it can be helpful because especially for remote work, because so much of remote work is about written communication, and being able to communicate asynchronously with people in other time zones. And so, showing that you can talk about technical topics and that you can say like, this was the objective and this is how I worked backwards from the objective or the goal we were working on this project and backed into it, can be really good. But again, I don't want you to feel like you have to do all of these things, because anything that you're gonna do kind of like, I don't know what level of language I'm allowed to have here, like half-assedly, is not going to be worth it. Don't join Twitter if you don't want to join Twitter. I keep my Facebook private and locked down because that's like for friends and family, and it's not something I'm using for professional reasons. And the same thing goes with Instagram. If that's like a family space, lock it down, make it private. You don't have to make it a professional place. But these are options. So let's talk about more hot tips. So make sure all your online personas are consistent. You're a real person, so it's okay to like multiple things and talk about things that aren't just technology. Just make sure that you're not saying conflicting stuff and it's clear that all of these links are coming from the same person. And make sure that everything is regularly being updated. I touched on this just a second ago, but especially if you link to it on your website, make sure it's something you're actively using. Otherwise, if it's a tool you signed up for that you no longer use, try to deactivate it or make it private, especially for those things that you really aren't trying to like use for professional purposes. And keep the photo professional. It doesn't need to be fancy, just nice. So that doesn't mean you have to have a professional headshot. Have a friend or partner or family member take you out outside where the natural light is good and have a nice background and just take, like a chest up smiling photo. It can really be that simple. And then write good copy, proofread, get a friend to read it over, get lots of friends to read it over, especially if you have some friends working in tech who can kind of look at it from that perspective. These are all things that you can kind of iterate on over time. So I know examples are helpful, so I brought a couple examples here. The first is a Skillcrush alum, EDINAH CHEWE, who is a oh-so-sweet British designer based in Toronto, and her design skills are like fire, as you can tell from these screenshots, and it's easy to see that her unique style carries over from her website to her Instagram, which she uses for professional purposes. You don't see a lot of like family photos on here because that's how she's chosen to use her Instagram, but even it really carries over, and she's found a lot of clients, even like Refinery 29 and Girl Boss, via Instagram. So that's worked really well for her. But I wanted to spotlight her too, because I think her brand carries over through her Behance and LinkedIn too. So her profiles are a great example of how creating and using like a consistent header image can really go a long way to carry your personal brand across multiple channels. And then Leslie is another Skillcrush alum, and she's a web developer. And I wanted to include Leslie because I think it's easy for people to be dismissive of like personal branding as something that's only for designers. But Leslie, who does not consider herself to be a designer, has done a great job here creating a consistent look and feel that feels like her, but is in a very different way than EDINAH. So, you know, she's using different photos, both for her headers and her profile photos, and they don't appear to be professionally taken, but they're still nice. She's still active on these things and is focused on using them as professional tools. So everything is clean and simple and consistent. And I hope this just helps you better picture what I'm talking about when I say online presence. And then I think now I want to take a total topic change and talk about experience, specifically how to get out of the experience catch-22. So let's talk about what employers mean when they say 1 to 2 years of experience. I know it's so frustrating to see this on job descriptions for junior roles because, after all, how are you supposed to get experience if no one will give it to you? It's so frustrating. And I have lots of thoughts about this because I think it's a huge problem in the industry that we really need to address. But as a job seeker, let's talk about what you can do to combat this. So employers are really looking for 2 things with these requirements. The first is, do you have the technical skills? The second is, do you understand what is really involved in doing this work, especially when it comes to working with team members, clients, and deadlines? So you need to address both of these things. And here's my employer-approved guide for hacking experience. So first, proving your technical skills. You can do this with strong work samples. So make sure your portfolio is included with your application. And if, for example, you know, you've launched kind of like a minimal viable product portfolio that's really simple and it doesn't have work samples on it, you know, link to a GitHub or Behance or other professional network that does have those things. And then the second thing, you can address all of this other stuff in a cover letter, or sometimes you're applying via email, so you can do it via that way. And this is great news for career changers because so much of the stuff in this category is applicable between industries. So it's really about updating your resume to reflect the tasks that are transferable and using your cover letter to provide context. That's where you can really stand out. So another way to show the employer that you understand what the job is to ask really good questions if you're lucky enough to get an interview. So definitely use that opportunity to your advantage by asking good questions. And one of my favorite questions is, what would your ideal candidate achieve in the first 90 days? This shows that you're forward thinking, that you want to know the realities of the job, and gives you way more insight into what they're looking for than you can probably get from the job description. So this allows you to immediately respond with your enthusiasm for those tasks and to address why you'd be able to crush those goals. And you can also weave in applicable info in future interviews when they ask you, you know, tell me about a time when you had to do X. So this comes up a lot for me in particular because I hire a lot of developers and designers as teaching assistants and instructors. And so, you know, it can be really motivating for designers and developers to feel like they want to give back and like mentor junior designers. And there's like something like sexy and interesting about that. But like the reality of that job is they're going to be answering a lot of really foundational questions over and over and over again. And like maybe students like aren't always the best at explaining really what their question is. And you have to kind of go back and forth a couple times, and it can be a lot. And so like something when I interview is I want to make sure that these candidates like understand kind of the realities of the job. And so when I explain that and when they're able to say like, oh yeah, no, it's totally fine, I don't get like bored easily or have a lot of patience, and then can give me examples of those soft skills, that's going to go just as far. All right, so but what if after all of this you're still thinking, but I don't have any real experience? Well, to that I say there are lots of ways to get experience, because I think so often we think of like 1 to 2 years of experience as full-time, but that's not what it says, and that's not what it means. And so For starters, freelancing totally counts as experience, even unpaid freelancing, although I always recommend charging something, even if it's just a little bit. So at Skillcrush, we teach students how to become freelancers, even if that's not what they ultimately want to do, because it can be such a great way to build up your portfolio and experience. Oh, okay. So can client work for friends and family. No one needs to know their friends and family. Hackathon projects, which are a great way to build up skills and the soft skills of like working with others and using Git in a professional workflow, for example. Work on other open source projects, same thing. And personal projects. Personal projects in particular are a favorite of mine because there are so many benefits. They show you have a passion for what you do, so much so that you built this project outside of work. They're a great way to get to know you. You're a crazy cat lady. You love coffee, whatever the case may be. It's obviously something you're passionate about. And you're not stuck to your client's terrible color preferences or non-disclosure agreements. That comes up a lot with agency work. And then I know I'm running low on time, so I'm trying to like power through because I want to be able to get through everything for you guys. So how to know if you're ready to look for work? Well, this may surprise you to learn, but it's not really your call. Hiring managers are going to tell you if they don't think you're ready by not moving you forward in the hiring process. Now, some of them will almost certainly be wrong. So that just means you have to keep trying, keep iterating on your resume, your portfolio, keep building your skills, because all you need is one hiring manager who sees your passion and your drive and is willing to take a chance on you. The first job, in my experience and the experience that I've seen with students, is so much harder to get. And after that, it really does get easier, especially because obviously you're a smart person who's doing good work. So embrace rejection. It's good practice, as hard as it may be. And the biggest mistake I see my students making time and time again is that they wait too long. So don't let that happen to you. And if you're, looking like, but like, am I really ready though? Because I've only done like X, Y, and Z. Like, I promise you that 90% of the time when students tell me like how little experience they have, my answer is still like, what do you have to lose? So if you're looking for a development job, I have put together some guidelines here. I would say I recommend focusing on HTML and CSS, Git in the command line, and a programming language like JavaScript. Because even if you're ultimately, these are obviously like front end focused, but even if you're ultimately looking to do be a full stack developer or do more back end, these are a great foundation that's going to help you really build up experience in all those ways that I listed. And you can always add more later. So similarly, if you're a designer, I recommend focusing on Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator. Designing a website that's responsive for all devices, and ideally learning HTML and CSS too, because even though Adobe Creative Cloud has a lot more competition these days, and there's a lot of other cool programs, like these are still the industry standard whether we love them or not, and are a good place to start. So I really love this Georgia O'Keeffe quote, and I think it's really applicable here, so I wanted to share. She said, I've been absolutely terrified every moment of my life and have never let it keep me from doing a single thing that I wanted to do. How powerful, right? I'm definitely not that brave. I let being scared stop me from doing stuff all the time, but that's something I definitely am working on, and I definitely aspire to that level of bravery, and I hope you do too, because I really do think that, putting yourself out there constantly, especially with the state of the world being what it is, and maybe, you are applying for dozens of jobs every week or whatever the case may be, like putting yourself out there and facing that rejection can be really scary. And so I just like to acknowledge that it's a brave thing to do. So for my last lesson here, I want to single out some pandemic specific things to consider, because I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It absolutely is harder to get a job right now. And that does mean you should widen the lens you're using to search for jobs. So maybe be a little less picky than you'd like to be, because like I said, specifically for you career changers, the first job tends to be the hardest. So just getting your foot in the door is a really big deal. So the first thing I encourage you to consider is tech adjacent roles. So customer support positions, especially technical customer support, project management / assistant. The goal here is really to find a good company and not worry too much about the exact role you end up in, because best case scenario, you land at a really good company that knows and values you, and will help you transition to kind of a more technical or design or whatever your dream role is. And even if that doesn't work out, you're still going to have more experience and more especially something you see a lot at tech job descriptions is like experience working at a startup or experience working remotely. So those are still things you're going to be able to build up in the process. And then bridge jobs. I love bridge jobs. I talk about them all the time with Skillcrush students because you can identify bridge jobs by asking yourself a few simple questions. First one is, what skills do you have now? And then what job do you want? So find 5 job postings for that job and go through and highlight what skills are you missing? What roles would help you fill those gaps? Oops, too fast. So as an example, maybe you've been working as a legal secretary, but you really want to be a front-end developer. Try looking for definitely front-end developer jobs. Start applying for those, especially if you have good skills and experience. But at the same time, try looking for legal secretary or administrative jobs at tech companies so that you can use your existing skills to help you get in the door. And then, like I said, hopefully transfer or leverage that experience. Because even if you can't transfer, that's still going to help you. That experience is still going to help you get a leg up at another tech company. Also, don't rule out in-person jobs. Because all jobs are remote right now, and they're going to help you build in-demand soft skills, including remote work experience, written and asynchronous communication skills, and you're going to have the opportunity to prove that you can excel in a remote environment because we're all working remotely right now, and hopefully negotiate work from home days later. Okay, I actually had this one more lesson that I want to leave you with, and that is how to make money now with minimal technical skills. So I talked earlier about the value of parallel tracking, and that applies here too. So I encourage you to throw a couple things at the wall and see what works for you. So, get creative about what you can offer. Hack a Squarespace site for someone. Something a lot of students say to me is that why would someone pay me to do that? It's not that hard, or it's very basic, or whatever the case may be. And I think a lot of times people are hiring you for the technical skills that you have, but just as often they're also hiring you because they don't have the time to do something or because they don't want to figure it out. So, there are full-time developers who make a living making Squarespace sites. I actually have a lot of friends who don't even know how to code. They're just designers who build Squarespace websites because other people don't want to figure it out. So keep it simple, silly. Don't overthink it. If someone is willing to pay you to do something and use your skills, that's still valuable experience. And, when you're in tech, you are exposed to all of these amazing professionals with these great skills, and that sometimes hurts us because we build up this this is what it means to be a developer or designer, and I'm not good enough, and why would someone hire me because I don't know enough? But you only need to know more than your client. You need to be able to stay one step ahead. And so something we teach at Skillcrush a lot is to get paid to learn. Once you have a foundation of knowledge, it really is possible. And this is actually when I was a full-time freelancer, how I built my business was by knowing enough and then very confidently telling my clients, I've never done that before, but I'm sure I can figure it out. And getting paid to learn how to do a new thing so that when I finished a project, I had a new portfolio project and a referral, hopefully, but also I knew how to do something else that was new and I got paid for it. So whenever possible, freelancing is a great way to do all of that. I will leave you with my Twitter handle here. It's Caroline Syrup. If you want to send me your questions there, I promise I will do my absolute best to answer all of them. And then I know I've referenced quite a few Skillcrush blog posts, and those are just at skillcrush.com/blog. So we talk a lot about a lot of these topics really in depth, and way more in depth than I could fit all of this into a 20-minute talk. So I hope that's a helpful resource for you in your job search. And thanks for tuning in and spending some of your afternoon with me today. I hope to see you around on the internet. Bye.